All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an evening presentation here at Uwawa Media. We have two special guests in studio, and we're calling this the Niagara Forum. And to your left, you can see Dante Miles, one of the founders of the Peacemakers, and to his right is Johnny Philip Leon Campanella, the man with more names than any human being in Niagara Falls. But
Johnny.
Just Johnny. Okay, we'll go with Johnny and Dante. And this evening we're calling it the Forum, which is an open forum and discussion because we are really in a mess in our society right now. We are messed up because here we are with Black Lives Matter happening. How do we make that mean something? How do we help our different communities within our community learn to live and work together? So, as I said, Dante and Johnny have agreed to come in. We were hoping for Kemza Musa, but he had some work to do this evening, so we miss you there, brother. But good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you both, and I'm glad you could both. And as I said earlier, the purpose of this show is to engage people in dialogue and discussion. And we already started that at the round table here prior to the show, and I thought that was a really powerful discussion. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask each of you to identify yourselves. I'll ask Dante first, going left to right.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Dante Miles, also one of the first coordinators of the Niagara Falls Peacemakers. Well, I always like to mention that I'm a dad first. Lone life citizen here in Niagara Falls, born and raised. I'm a musician, play keyboard, bass, all that good stuff. And I'm very much I would consider myself a community activist, just wanting better for our city. I think, that kind of sums it up.
Good. And Johnny, introduce yourself. I don't think any of our viewers have met you before. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm Johnny Campanella, 28 years old, and I've been born and raised in Niagara Falls, New York, LaSalle to be exact. My whole life I've been here. I have got my associate's degree in public communications, and I'll be getting my bachelor's degree in public communications quite soon, hopefully. And I'm just very interested in general. I'm interested in culture. I'm interested in music, video games, and animals. I love animals, and I just want to one day hopefully have a platform like this, even like a TV show, or have a platform where we can talk about things going on in the world and things that we can solve and help all together, and just grow as people, and hopefully find each other, to be more alike than we think we are, I feel like.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah, it was enjoyable talking before the show. We have a discussion prior to the show to go over what we're going to be talking about. I thought it was the best. I wish we recorded it.
I know.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, to kick this off, it's kind of simple. I started with Black Lives Matter. We have the African American community in Niagara Falls, just as it is throughout the U.S., feeling very much disadvantaged, feeling very much at risk, and the greater community around the African American community is trying to rally and show that Black lives do matter, that no longer should anyone live in fear or intimidation just because a system exists that might treat them differently. And we know that difference in treatment has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
And Dante, why don't you give us an example? Like, one of the questions I posed to you earlier was, what's the major difference between the African American community? I understand it's hard to speak for everyone, but from your experience, you are a leader within your community. What's the difference between the African American community and say the white American community?
One of the big differences is that due to history, and when we trace as far back as we can, you get a lot of a lack of empathy when it pertains to the history and how it affects blacks now, today. And I believe that, the difference is like the example I gave earlier. I've heard someone, a white friend, say, hey, my grandfather, he worked real hard and did what he had to do. We went through X, Y, and Z, and, but he worked to make a good living for himself. And, we were able to, we had that same work ethic and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with like a person that has black lineage and that's black, and their history isn't the same. The thing is that a lot of our ancestors had excellent work ethics. Only problem is that when they worked, they didn't get paid. They were working for free. So, it's a level of frustration, and they were working to give to the person, you know what I'm saying, that was kind of oppressing them. The same people that were, snatching them away from their families and raping their wives and, killing their kids, and the gruesome things that people don't want to talk about because it is gruesome and it doesn't feel that great. These are the things that it affects us today because it deals with the system that's still affecting blacks today. So it's not about, it's more so about just getting an understanding. I guess that's a Bible verse that I always love to hear, is that in all thine getting, to get an understanding. Don't listen to give a rebuttal, but more so listen to understand where I'm coming from, or where a group of people who are disenfranchised, or a group of people who don't live in a culture or a community or in a country that has a level playing field. So that's the difference. The playing field isn't even, and it isn't level, and you're still expected to perform at peak level, So it is a level of a difference when it comes down to how the system affects blacks versus white.
And that system has affected them a lot, like not just up until the end of the Civil War. We were talking earlier about the fact that the system after the Civil War, through the mistreatment and the age of the Klan and right up to Emmett Till and segregation and separate water fountains. It's just been one thing after another since the end of the Civil War that perpetuated the disadvantages for the black community, that, it didn't end with slavery.
Right. And afterwards, again, when we look at situations such as Rosewood, and when you look at situations such as Tulsa, when there was come on, and I can't see why it's leaving me right now. Black Wall Street, when you had a black community that actually built and had their own banks and their own grocery stores, and they were growing and they were prospering, and they began to learn, money began to circulate within that one community more than once, like it does now in the black community. A lot of times money doesn't circulate one good time within the black community. Now when it got to a point like at the Black Wall Street where, they were starting to be more financially stable, self-sufficient, then the system dropped actual bombs and killed and slaughtered, that whole group of people. So, yeah, so although, yes, slavery in that sense of the word, when it talks about the 400 years, yes, that may have ended, but then there was still a level of oppression that still remained, and that still remains today in many cases.
Right. I mean, what you said earlier about how the racism card, like the brakes been taken, the brakes off and the car's still going because there is still a lot of systematic racism. And like we were just talking earlier about how, I've never had to worry about being followed in a store by the store owner or going on a bus and someone moving away from me. And I've seen these things done, but, I don't know that that lifestyle, but I acknowledge and I listen. I like to listen to both parties. If there's, any type of discourse or any conversation, I like to know each side and then, go from there.
Right.
And try to be understanding. And, as someone who's gay, that's not something that defines me. I don't usually just say, hi, my name's Johnny, and then I'm that. But, I see also what happens. I wanted to bring up, we got the right for marriage. And then, we have our flag. And then what I was kind of disheartened to see is how the community, for example, instead of just the LGBTQ community having the rainbow flag, there's now, there's a trans flag, there's a gender neutral flag, and it feels like it's building, it's going more to cliques, I feel like, almost like separation, instead of just being one, because that flag really represents one,
Right.
And I feel like some of the issues that I see, and for example, for my community that doesn't help is, for example, I know last year in LA Pride, I saw men walking around, on video, I saw men walking around literally naked. So it's something and there was kids there. And I feel like that people like to usually put people are oversexed if they're gay or in that community. And it's very, and I feel like there's a part of our community where it should just be for adults. I do believe that, but then also there's, the educational things that I think kids are they should know. So then when they're older, things aren't just like, what is this, and
Right.
and so they're not sheltered away. And to know that, being gay is not a choice, because I can tell you right now, I had a scenario when I was in high school where I tried to end my life, but I actually, God, thank you, because I made it through. And I have a whole story about that. That'll be another day, that I really felt like I was saved by God. It felt very it was not my time. But then, because I was afraid, the only reason I did that was because I was afraid that I wasn't going to be accepted by my parents, which was the exact opposite. Everybody accepted me and loved me and acted nothing. So I did all that in my head because of that fear. But that fear is real, because some people don't have the opportunity to actually be able to come out to their parents and be accepted. They're kicked out, or
Right.
they're not accepted. And I can understand how hard that affects you, because in my own head, which was a thought, not even reality, what I was thinking would happen, because I felt like they weren't going to accept me, and if I would be homeless or something, that actually happened. So I could feel that pain. If I can get that and conjure that up in my head without going through that, I couldn't imagine going through it. And
Right.
so each, I mean, and there's different ways I think we can relate as, communities, different, that have been protested against and looked down upon, that are now it's coming to light now of how truly equal we are as
Good
people.
point. That was well put. And it's actually very true. Something you said reminded me. I was involved in Pride in Toronto for a number of years because I owned a lot of sound equipment, and I would put it on various floats, etc. And then my wife and I would come down. We always had a favorite tent on Church Street. It was called the International Tent, and we would visit with those who were coming into Toronto from all over the world. And it was a wonderful celebration. But back in the 90s, there was a lot of fetishism in the floats and the displays and the way people were acting. And the community responded to that. And then the gay community responded to that by going back to some better values that could be seen by the entire family instead of something that, like you said, it should be more adult, which is sad because it's a celebration of a part of our community.
Right.
Right.
You know, and it was good to see the community responding to that. I grew up in Toronto. I love Toronto because it is multicultural. We don't see color in many ways in Toronto. It doesn't make us perfect. We still have a lot of racism, and I've encountered it with my wife actually many years ago. I think I told Dante that story where I encountered racism and I never knew would be there. But what? Okay, so we're looking at the black community here in Niagara Falls. We're looking at the white community. What are some steps we could take to better understand each other, to better relate?
Well, again, listening with an ear to understand and not listening to give a rebuttal. Being willing to step outside of your comfort zone as it pertains to what you're not used to hearing. Because I think what happens is a lot of times when you speak on these type of topics, that because it's not a part of someone else's norm and it sounds bad, and there's a level of guilt that comes along with it, you know, it becomes easier for some people to try to detour it and say, well, I didn't enslave you, or, you know, I didn't enslave anybody in your, but at the end of the day, like there's a system that still oppresses blacks and that whites still have a positive effect for them. You know what I mean? They like where they still where they're still, you know, you're still winning off of this system. You know what I mean? And again, so my thing is, I think when we listen, and use your platform, you know what I'm saying? If you're going to use your platform, if for anyone who wants to help that cause, because we don't need a savior when it comes down to it, I believe that we're very well capable of speaking for ourselves.
Yes.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the word was benefit. That's the word that just slipped my mind. Where you know, whites in America are benefiting from the system that we're still being oppressed by in many cases. But the platform, if you have a platform to allow, you know what I mean, where the education piece, because education for this type of conversation is needed. And if you don't understand, like, you know, the true history behind how we are where we are today, then, or if you don't, if you choose, and then that's a choice, and that's another thing. Some people choose not to understand. It's not that, you know,
ignorant and they don't want it.
Right, and it's purposely, you know, I don't want to understand. Let's just sweep over it. Like I always tell people, if I hit a pothole in the road, if I choose not to talk about that pothole, does not make that pothole go away. You have to address it, and then you got to go to the places that makes the decisions that, you know, those people who make those decisions on how, you know, when that pothole is going to get filled. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to go and speak where the oil is. Our thing is that black people are very capable of speaking up for themselves. Sometimes we just don't have the right audience. You know what I mean? Or we may not have that platform, you know what I mean, that we can speak. So to give people of all colors and all color and all white walks of life the opportunity to get an education on what it is that we have to live day by day. You know what I mean? I tell people I go to sleep black and I wake up black. And that's something that, you know what I mean? And when I wake up, there's a different, like I said earlier, you know, if police pull, you know, them lights come on behind me, my heart beats at a rate that a lot of people that don't look like me will not understand. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, like what we were saying earlier, like it's almost like, you know, how the, you know, slaves would run away from plantations. Now, when police are running after blacks now, currently, it's like it's brought back, you know, that same trauma, that PTSD I was saying. It's like a PTSD that has been brought, you know, from generation to generation.
Yeah, inherited.
And but like you were saying, you know, yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like the black community is more than capable, and we were talking earlier about how it's just the most important thing is to gather and to make a plan and go to legislation, you know, go to legislators and actually try and get these things changed so it can be more equal, because point blank, we, in general, out of anything, we just need a whole new way. We have to revamp how we live and how this country is and make it truly equal. It's going to take a while, and I think I think generations. I know my younger cousin who's going to be starting high school. Her generation is very. They're very accepting and open, and it's almost like shocking. I never thought it'd be like back in my day. People were way more judgmental back when I was in high school. I graduated in 2010, and I feel like, their generation now is, if anything, I guess, less racist or prejudiced. And I think that also has to do with the parents. And I hope and I do believe that if we keep instilling that this, what's right is right, that hopefully, over time, generations it'll just kind of die out, hopefully, if we can keep this going and keep educating people. And like, just like you said about the platform, if you have a platform, and that's something that I aspire to have, I want to have a platform so I can have people speak of all different types of, whatever issue it is. I would want people to speak and have that voice. I don't want to. It wouldn't just be an all about me thing, because it's very. We like to have the intellectual debates and conversations, and those are the people from the groups that I protest. Those people from both sides need to get together, like I was saying, and talk and be able to have a conversation without getting their emotions too wrapped up in it.
Right.
And then they can explain to some people maybe that at that time, their emotions are just over, you can get over emotional sometimes, and you have to let that emotion out, and that's completely understandable. And then have someone maybe who's calmer and that can, have that conversation, and just start from there and find your things that are alike, your not your differences, but what you have alike, and try to go from there, and like you were saying about strengths, we can, easily talk about our strengths, but we don't talk about what our weaknesses are, and we don't like to talk about them, especially to other people, if their views are against us. But if we open ourselves up to have actual feedback and opinions on our weaknesses, then we can just be stronger and better people in general.
Absolutely.
Good point. I'm glad
Absolutely.
you joined us tonight.
Me too. I love
Yeah,
this
it's
stuff.
fun. One of the things that I noticed is within our community, and I moved here about to Niagara Falls in 2016. I moved to the U.S. in 2002. But one of the things I noticed here in Niagara Falls is that you have a predominantly white culture in leadership. And I'm not trying to pander to any other culture. But here's an example. There's a picture from Kathy Hochul, who I think looks great for an embalmed woman. But I don't know, she just kind of rubs me the wrong way. But here she is at a tourism committee meeting with all the major leaders in tourism in Niagara Falls. And what I notice is everyone's white, male. And I find that with city council as well. You have 5 white males on council. You have 1 woman within the leadership who's the town clerk, city clerk, and that's it. And there's just it doesn't reflect the diversity or the character of our community. And I personally think that's, it's got to be really dejecting for someone, especially a person of color. And when I say person of color, I'm not just speaking of black versus white. I'm talking about Asian Americans. I'm talking about people who come from the Middle East.
Right.
Any Hispanic peoples from India. Anyone who comes into our community and identifies as a minority has to feel kind of defeated by the fact that no one is reflected on city council other than white males.
Well, that's true.
Right.
That's true. And it gives it's another look when it comes down to young people, minorities of, of color, because it shows that level of, feeling less than, you know what I mean? Because it's
Right.
like, wow, there's nobody that represents me that looks like me. We have about 5 or 6 police officers on the force out of all the police officers in our city. Those who are, that have some level of authority, it doesn't reflect what Niagara Falls looks like when it
Right.
comes down to,
No, not at all.
you know what I mean, as far as like the
Diversity.
in the city, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
No, that's fact.
I feel like, especially our generation though too. I know a friend of mine who is, who is a person of color that wants to be a lawyer or even run in this city, and I think that, it's sad to say, unless we can change now and make the, the council, have that be more of different, gender and race, if we can't, it's going to eventually go to the point where once it'll die out, and we can hopefully keep, go with what the plan is and try to get all together and not have this issue that we're having, which is, it seems to be everywhere. And I guess I feel like recently, the past few years, people have just realized, wow, everything is that, just white, older men, you know what I mean? And people are like, wow, I didn't think that would still be. You were talking about, Peter, about the museum that was owned by two white women. What was?
Oh, not owned, but it was a critique from Ken Hamilton about the fact that the two senior positions at the Underground Railroad Museum were occupied by white people, whereas the museum itself is a tribute to is a commemoration of people of color, and that those type of positions should be within the purvey of the black community.
Right. I wouldn't feel right to do that anyway. There's like a point where you're respectable but for that I would not be, I wouldn't want to have to represent something that isn't, me, I guess I could say. I want people of their stories to be able to represent themselves.
And it's impossible for anyone to like it's hard to not believe that you couldn't find two solid representation of black people here in the whole city of Niagara Falls that has the capability to run that heritage, that Underground Railroad Heritage Museum. That screams volumes. It screams deafening volumes when for something that represents our culture, to not have someone in leadership, to actually, whose culture that represents, what I mean? Those two young ladies, and I don't know them personally, so I won't speak on their character, but and I'm quite sure, but they don't understand. They would never have a sheer understanding of the feeling behind that and how it feels even today. You know what I'm saying? So right. So I guess that could be problematic. You know what I mean? And again, it shows it shows someone else wow, we have Underground Railroad Heritage Museum about slaves that escaped slavery, going into Canada and all of this good stuff, but it's ran by people who don't look like me. Right.
Yeah. And I was just thinking of an example. I don't know the monument's name, but it's of Abraham Lincoln with the slave, and the whole premise is that there's I know there's a black woman and a black man that their job is to go and to show tourists, and explain the monuments, and that monument specifically, it was told by a black woman, and people understood because she explained what it meant and how the slave kneeling wasn't to be looked at. He wasn't looking down upon. He was free, and it was once you get context to something, everything changes. But when you hear it from someone that is of that ethnicity, you truly understand. You truly take from it, because unless you hear it from another race, it just kind of seems like they're just giving information out, and it doesn't. You don't take it as to heart as much as you would, and that's like I said, like a straight person telling my story or about being gay and what it feels like, and how how exactly how you don't know. They don't know how I feel, just like nothing, like I said, nothing against the women, like you said. It's just that at least they should, maybe at least we should find something to try to have people know of these positions more, maybe even just to let people know, even on Facebook or social media platforms that a lot of younger people our age or even younger or older go on and know that these things are available. And just the thing is about this city is that I don't know everything, but I know it's very corrupt, and it's very I said ever since the plants left and everything, and the people who got into power, it's just so we basically need new representation like ASAP, and we need our Niagara Falls is so fluent with all different colors and cultures, and I feel like what can bring us together, which is culture, is also what separates us, which I was saying earlier, is that our culture separates us. When people say about the skin color, it's not even that, because our cultures, I know of people who have grown up in, like white people growing up in all black neighborhoods, their culture matches with the people of color who they grew up with. and then or vice versa, and you see how like culture changes, you know, because then people get made fun of, like for like you know, my one friend used to get made fun of for talking white because he was black, but he grew up in a white neighborhood, and you know, and I just don't understand why we can't understand that culture does have a big role in it, and that, you know, it also helps us learn about each other and then find our differences, but then find things that we like in common and that could bring us together, you know, and that's why I believe the full intention of, you know, the melting pot of America, it could actually be that in a positive way and not what it's been, you know, what it's been and what is right now.
And one thing that I've also learned is that, like we spoke earlier, there's such a level of just judgmental,
Yeah.
like a judgmental culture where people find it so easy to judge others on what they consider to be,
Right.
you know, their lack or what they consider to be their
Right.
flaws. And in many cases, those people are usually the ones that's dealing with their own demons, their own skeleton. Well, they're not dealing with
Right.
them; they're reflecting from them.
Yeah.
And they don't. A lot of times they don't want to talk. We actually have
we
a call.
got a
Got a
caller.
call. Wonderful.
Oh, here we go. Hello, welcome.
Hey.
Hi, yes, hello. I was just calling in to make a few comments. I wanted to comment on what Dante has said about with the Underground Railroad, and I agree with him. I feel that, you know, maybe they didn't go looking for an African American to run the place. Maybe it was just because they wanted to choose who they wanted to be there. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
That's happening in this city all the time. You choose who you want to be there. You don't give other people a chance, even if they qualify or even apply for that position. And there's one more thing I wanted to say. The other gentleman, I wasn't sure what his name is. I wanted
Johnny.
to know what qualifies. What's his name?
Johnny. I'm Johnny.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Okay, Johnny. Hi, Johnny.
Hi.
I wanted to say that what qualifies you, because you were saying something, if this is the right person, I'm sorry. You were saying something about, if you if a white person grow up in a black neighborhood, then they tend to act black, or you said something, or if a black person grow up in a white person's neighborhood, then they tend to act white or talk white. What is that? Why can't it just be that why can't it be that they're just who they are and they're talking in the way that they're talking? It doesn't have to be a certain color. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh no, I guess I'm trying to word it right. Like, that's what I'm saying, is that I don't know why my friends would get made fun of, like my black friend who would get made fun of because he didn't have that, you know, slang, which I find is ridiculous. I don't understand why it has to be looked at like that. And I'm just saying, like, I was trying to bring up the fact that culture is something that can bring us together, but it also divides us, and that's a thing. I feel like if you grow up in a neighborhood and you're of a different race than that majority of the neighborhood, you're not going to be able to relate as well with others. And if we can just embrace our cultures and embrace differences in a good way, I don't understand the problem with this. So I do agree with you. That's what I was trying to get at.
Right. Okay. Awesome. I'll keep walking. I'll keep watching.
Thank you.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Good take.
It's difficult to explain because it's crazy how, like you were saying, this is perfect. Opinions, you know, everybody has an opinion and you're entitled to that. A lot of things people have are when they're comfortable or the thing they believe in and are for is widely accepted, then they feel that they have that ignorance of, well, you know, everybody else agrees with me, so I don't have to say anything, or I don't have to sit here and talk and explain to you, or, you know, and that's where that ignorance comes off too, I feel like. And I just wish that, I think our generations we're just going to be more open and stop talking and listening, and just I feel like we just all have to, as humans, relate to each other as people and take care of each other and understand that we're not all at the same spot. And that goes for so many things, you know. So it can be something that can be achieved. It just takes time and patience and understanding and acknowledging everything. And
well, I'll even go on to say, especially, and I think this is probably something that was kind of like agitating to me, because the phrase "talking white," to me, that's not even cool. Like, you know what I mean? Because if someone speaks with, you know, proper
Right. That shouldn't.
You know what I'm saying? And there's you're speaking proper English, proper. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you're talking white. You're speaking a certain way. And there's there's levels of different cultures. There's certain slang that people may have or whatever the case is. But if I talk with a level of etiquette and I'm it doesn't mean that I'm talking white, because then that will go on to say that
would say that just white people would talk like that. And
eloquence is not a racial privilege.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to apologize if it seemed like that. That's just how it was. When I was just giving an example of what I saw and what the term is, and that's what I found offensive is that you're talking white. No, they're talking. Just because you don't have a slanger, it's almost like an accent. You know what I mean?
Right.
You grew up in a neighborhood or however you are as an individual too. Like, it's not speaking black or speaking white. It's just, that's who you are as a person. But if you speak, I guess, opposite of what you would be associated to speak as, then it's a big deal. You know what I mean? And I think that it just shows that, like, so if like someone was speaking in a different way than the other white people, then they're like looked at, and then they're looked down upon, and that just brings out the whole prejudice and stereotype, and then it's just a terrible look. And I just don't understand how you can judge people just off of that, because I've never, it's hard to believe it, but I really do believe that, like, ever since I was young, I didn't see that, like, the way you talked as a way of how smart or how you spoke. I just don't. It's it's completely different for each person.
Well, that's a good point. By the way, a number of people have asked if this is a new show. I just wanted to mention that this is we're calling this the Niagara Forum, and it's a start for us of creating open dialogue about the different communities within our city. And we're talking about different communities racially, different communities based on interest, etc. And so what we're trying to do now is create dialogue. And I loved it earlier this evening when we were having our little pregame scrum, and Dante says, I love dialogue. And just the way you said that had a really strong ring to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's probably one of the things that's going to actually help bring us together.
That's number one.
Community-wise, is that when we start breaking down these walls of communication, because really across this country, but like, let's just focus on where we are now in the city of Niagara Falls.
Right.
In this small city with less than 48,000 people, there are so many walls of communication that are like basically build up. Right. You know what I mean? And we're not one group of people is not talking to another group of people, whether it be divided by religion, whether it be divided by race, whether it be divided by some level of culture, definitely politics.
Yeah.
That whole thing right there, that's what keeps us fighting when the Democrat, Republican, and and if we stay focused on that all the time,
we could overcome all that. I feel like politics do that on purpose. Like, it's literally to keep us fighting with each other, when we should just be like, no, like, y'all are, we're done. We're done with you. We're going to take this. We have to take it on our own hands almost, is what, yeah.
Because, and that's one of the biggest things. I like to deal with people.
Right.
I'm a people person. And when I say that, that's not just kind of like a casual, phrase that I use. I'm a people person to the point where whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I want to know what your theory or what your mindset is, and where's your moral fiber lies. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the biggest things, because it would be so unfair for me to group a person, even when we're dealing with politics.
Right.
For me to group someone in a box because of their, affiliation, as far as political affiliation, and say, oh, you're all of this just because you're a Republican or just because you're a Democrat. It's like,
same thing
that
with race
would be so fair. It's the same situation with race. Because I'm black, doesn't mean that I like hip hop. Or because I'm black doesn't mean that, you know what I'm saying? I'm supposed to subscribe to things that are so stereotypical from media. And that's what happens. We allow media to just dictate what we should think, or what we should do, or how we should act, or how we should talk, or what music we should like. So I think that's one of the things, when we step outside of this matrix and actually see the real world for what it is, I think that's where change will actually begin to take place. But while you're in the matrix, you kind of get stuck in your own way, your own mind. You can continue to live out things the way you think, because this system that's feeding you and you're feeding the system back, that's the thing that's going to stay in your head, and it doesn't allow you to grow. It doesn't allow you to mentally evolve. You won't listen for understanding. You won't try to understand someone else. So, I mean, and that's my thing. I'm totally against the whole matrix. It's like, yo, let's break out of this and let's let everyone see things for what they truly are.
Right. And that brings up this, I just I always thought of this, but like there's this thing, I don't know the name of it, but it's a way of thinking, but it's basically, right. I've always had this issue too, struggling with this simple fact right here of like, for example, my aunt, rest in peace, she worked her butt off at her job, okay? But she loved what she did, but I'm just saying, take any person, for example, they spend their whole life just working, right? They miss things, they go, even despite their health, and retire, and they all of a sudden just, the year, not even 6 months after they retire, they pass away, or they, just drop.
Yeah.
And, we're taught from, school age that we have to work and make money, and I always have this issue too, because it's like, of course, I getting a job is good, and you have to use money, and you have to, think of these things. But the whole fact that our life is spent on figuring out a job that we can make the most money in, to then eventually, have it not matter one bit and have nothing to say. I want to have a life of meaning. I want to do things that make me happy, at least a little bit, because I feel like at this point in time, people are just finally maybe over this whole matrix and this whole idea of work and make money and do this job. And, and the same thing goes just with like taking care of everything that is here before us too. We're so, I say humans, we're so selfish, and we destroy everything and disrespect things that were here way before us. And the earth will always be here after us too. So it's like, we're just, we should really take advantage of this time of I guess awakening is what I think it was called.
Right.
And just to really, like I said, it'd be a very complex thing on figuring out how we could still make, we could all make a living and be able to do things on our own and buy nice things if we want here and there. But we have to stop viewing material things as such a big deal, and looking at just being actually happy. Because you see all of the people who got the money. I met someone who had the money. He lost it. When he had the money, he was completely the same as before, when he thought having money was a good thing. He was like, right. I have all this money. I have this car. I have the girl, but I'm still miserable, because it's about our soul, and it's about, literally our spirit, instead of just our work ethic and the material things. We shouldn't be what we own. We should just be
who we are.
Right. And
you know what? And here's one thing I have to say, and this is something that I have been really experiencing. I have to give a big shout out to the millennials, and I'm not that far from it. I'm Generation X. I'm not old.
I'm an old millennial.
Okay.
That's what they call 28, in that 92. So right on there, I'm old millennial.
And what I like about it is because a lot of them are getting out of this just old way of thinking, and they're not just I like the show me type generation that they are, because I kind of think millennialistic too, because I'm not just going to take your word for it. If you can't show me where it's positive, or you're going to have to show and prove, if you can't show me where it works and where it works positive, then I'm not going for it. I'm not a subscriber. I just don't go whichever way the wind blows.
Right.
So my thing is I think that's where a lot of the change is going to take place, because a lot of people are set in their ways. But when you're dealing with young people who are willing to challenge and question, I just had a conversation about this last night. I love the fact that young people are willing to step outside and say, hey, you know what? And you don't have to be disrespectful to question someone.
No.
All you have to do is say, hey, I may not agree with what you're saying. So, show me how that works.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Show me how this is going to be is for the betterment of the environment that I'm in. Show me how it's going to, better the quality of life for me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or
That's-
my kids.
Right, that's what it's going to take. And I was saying about, I guess that's a better way of wording, like how I said, like die out, meaning like this generation, the millennials and younger, and I think so on and so forth. It's just it's more of the show me attitude, and I believe that we'll be able to get rid of the people that have the system the way it is, to be able to branch out and actually we can, have positive steps for every type of person. And I completely agree with that. And I think each generation it's going to get better, and I hope,
Hold on, I see my aunt's calling.
Oh.
I wonder if she want to be on the show. Hold on, let me
Hi,
make
Doug.
sure.
His aunt.
Hey, Auntie, you on the show? You want to call in?
Huh?
Did you want to call in? I'm actually on the show live.
You're on the line?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. baby.
That's all right. Love you,
Call me when
honey.
you get off the line.
Okay, love you, sweetheart.
Oh, that is awesome.
See, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know she wanted to call in or not. Hey, that's cool.
Well, gentlemen, as we come into about 12 minutes left here, what do we do? Like, I keep wondering, what can we do? Dante and Johnny, it's been great having you with us. We've had Dante on the show a few times, and it's always good to get good voices here. How can we make these voices heard? How can we, what can we do in our community? Could we set something up where we do more of these forums, and hopefully people will listen and not just speak or wait to respond?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea to get, just everyday people like us, and just get us all in an event, or some type of thing where we can talk and just
Like a forum where
Right.
where their voice is heard. Actually, there was one thing that and for those who may watch this show tonight, my thing or an idea that I wanted to have to break. You remember, like I was just talking about these walls,
Right.
of
Yeah.
communication that's up, especially between the young and the old. During my campaign, I would talk to young people, and I would ask them, like, how was their relationship with the elders? And a lot of the times they would say, they don't want to listen to us. They don't want to hear us, right? And that's usually 96.82%
Right. Everybody.
of the, that response is they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear it. Not that we're going to tell them what to do.
Right.
They just don't want to hear us out.
yeah.
Period. Right.
You got to hear us out, especially for the young. If we're going to be preceding you, and they should also explain what they didn't do for our generation. A lot of people do say that, the millennial generation kind of got screwed because of things that prior generations didn't think of. I think after the war, though, I think it was such a horrible time after, and for it to end, I don't think people were thinking of the future as much as like, oh wow, okay, we won the war, we're good, now we can build the country. And I don't think, I just think it didn't. We're like, okay, well, what about the future? What are they gonna do?
Right.
And this is where we have to take it into our own hands and hear us out. Just
Now here's the other flip side to it, because I would ask the elders, well, how is your relationship with the younger generation? And they would say they never want to listen to anybody. So they're literally saying the same exact thing. You know what I mean? We're saying you have the same response. So my thing is how do we get the young and the older together in a room and allow these walls to begin to get torn down? My thing is to have a listening forum.
I
A
agree.
forum where one day where the young speak to the elders, tell them give them their grievances
without being interrupted.
And watch this, and without having a rebuttal or some type of answer, because I believe that that generation is worth more than the 1 or 2 minutes that you're thinking of some type of response to give them to what they're saying. So let them speak, let them record the information. The elder go home, sit on it, sleep on it, empathize with the young people for a minute, put yourselves in their shoes, and say, okay, well, what could we do to make this better? On your own time, come back, and once you let the young people know and bring the whole crew back, let them know that we took the time to respect what you were talking about, to go home, think about it for a moment, and now maybe we could do this on our end to try to
like
be able to work with you.
An educated opinion.
Right.
Educated.
That gave time, that required time, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then there's another side to it. So once that happens, that second meeting when the elders talk back to them, then the elders get a chance to express themselves to the young. And I mean, keep it like A100. That's the way I look at it. Keep it raw. You don't have to swear. You don't have to be vulgar. You don't have to yell and scream. But tell the truth. Tell your truth of how you feel. And
even say, like, I don't mean to offend, but if you're, like, afraid of talking about a certain subject, because I know that's a big thing, too. You're afraid of offending, but if you're trying to explain something and then you gotta get. You know what? People have to get out of their comfort zone. Right.
You know what I mean?
You have to be uncomfortable.
And gentlemen, just along those notes, I think we are positioned to do that. We could bring a small group in here. We could bring, say, several elders. And I'm a boomer, by the way. Just I'm 60.
You don't look like it.
Hey, there you go. I'm 61. But what I'm thinking is, it's something that, first of all, Dante, you've always been open to facilitating. Johnny, you've shown in your first appearance that you've got a really good grasp of things. And we could facilitate something where several elders come in and several young people. And maybe what we do is have them talk, and then on the show, they have to represent the other side. So in other words, the young
that's
people,
very interesting.
The young people share.
So they take it in.
Yeah, what the issues were with the elders, and vice versa. The elders reiterate what the young people told them. We could do lunch. We can have them come in, make it something relaxed, but definitely, like, not just listening, but boy, does it teach you something when you have to voice on the other side, for the other side.
That's why in school they make you do the presentations, and you go up there and then that you learn it. You have to, but you learn, and that's a very interesting idea.
I think we need to do that.
And what happens is, once it's done on both ends, and once both sides had the opportunity to actually take in all of this information, you know what I mean? Take it in, sleep on it.
Right.
For a week. I don't care.
Give time.
Give time to it. Be fair, you know what I mean? Because, and not just come up with some answer that you concocted in your mind for a minute while you're listening. And at that point, it shows that you're not even completely listening, because you're trying to come up with an answer to what their issue or their grievances are.
That's the older generation. They do that. I mean, older than the boomers. I know people.
So our thing is, I think where my head is if we do that on both ends, and we allow both sides to share their grievances, and both sides to get an opportunity to sleep on it, and come back and express what they're willing to do to try to help, move things forward in a positive light. Then now we've shattered this wall down, and now after that second meeting, then there's like, what is our plan of action? Because now you're only accountable for what you know. And that's why I say that to everyone. I'm only held accountable for what I know. So once you give me this information, now I have the knowledge of it. A lot of this information is a lot of people want to block out a lot of information, because if I don't know about it, you ain't gotta it's very uncomfortable.
That's the biggest thing too, I believe, with race, is if you're uncomfortable.
It is. I tell everybody, listen, when you start talking about race again, and that's why, let me be totally transparent and honest. That's why it bothers me when I see, these Blue Lives Matters and All Lives. I believe of course everybody's life matters. If you have the common sense that God gave a worm in the middle of a rainstorm, you will understand that hey, I'm just, you will understand that we're not trying to say that no one or our lives matter more than anybody else's. Only problem is that when black folks see people that look like them getting shot down as if it's a sport, and this show, it makes us feel that our lives don't matter as much. So we're saying so like you said before, how about Black Lives Matter too, or as well? Right. You know what I mean? Once we understand, once we in the position where we feel like our lives matters just as much as everybody else, then we can celebrate this big banner of all lives mattering. But at this point, we're talking about, again, like I said before, if a fire truck is called to, 111, 11th Drive, let's spray down all the houses. All houses matter. Well, we're talking about the one that's on fire.
The one that's on fire. It's like all houses, and then the one's on fire. Okay, and then all the houses are like, well, we need water too, but it's like, no, this house needs fire. So these people need help right now. They
Right.
need the water right now.
Same way with-
and you, if you needed the water, would be also taken care of. That's what it is.
Yeah, and same
it's
way.
not-
I tell you what, and it's the same way with
Like it's not like pro whatever. It's just
yeah.
we matter. Like you matter.
And I said the same thing about Mother's Day.
Right.
I said Mother's Day. Can you imagine you're celebrating your mother,
Right.
And someone comes up to you and says, "All mothers matter, not just yours."
Right. It's
Or
like-
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like, hold on, wait, but this is
it's
my
a
mom, and
common
I'm celebrating.
sense thing, and it's overthought because of mass information.
I'll tell you
and-
what it is. It's again, it's a rebuttal, or
Right.
it's basically combating what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Black lives because of a specific time. Like I said before, 2015, 104
Right.
people. Black men and women in 1 year got killed at the hands of the police. Only 13 were charged. That's
Right.
2 deaths of black unarmed men and women, for 2 deaths a week for a whole year. The thing is we're not saying that no one else's lives matter or our lives
Right,
matter more
right.
than anyone else. What we're saying is right now, from the system that we're looking at, our lives don't matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the
or at
last
least
one
the way it was built. Yeah, it
Right.
clearly wasn't in favor.
So, and especially when it comes down to like I mentioned the Twin Towers. Now that's always a touchy subject for
Yeah.
everybody else. We always want to remember 9/11.
Right.
But the thing is that could you imagine on 9/11 while people are, got the flags and got everything, and they're just like, they're paying homage
Yeah.
to all of the lives and stuff, that someone walks up to them during that whole thing and says, you know what? All buildings matter. You know how many buildings were destructed and tore down and
Right.
so on and so forth? Especially when you're doing it I'm telling you, a whole flat out war would probably take place if people did that. You
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
Because 9/11 is a big thing here in the country. You know what I mean? And because we felt like it was, this whole terroristic thing or whatever the case is. Well, black folk feel like it's terroristic on this end. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but we,
I know what you're trying. Yeah,
we
right,
just,
right.
We just don't like. I'll tell you what a lot of us don't like, because I'm not going to speak for everybody, but we just don't like being treated as or try to make them feel like, okay, what we're fighting for is not a justifiable cause.
Right.
You guys, everybody's lives matter. You know what I
Right.
mean? Now, if I went down to Ground Zero while they were, memorializing the people who died
Or
and
all
everything like
terrorist
that,
acts matter too.
and I said, hey, all buildings and all lives matter. You know how many people died
Right.
in California last year? If I tried to like minimalize what they were there for and that purpose, then that would be considered treason.
Right. Your whole point is minimalizing something, and making it more than, and it's completely wrong. I know exactly what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got a
Hopefully we can get
comment
better.
to share with you from Patty Hayes. She's a great follower of all of our programs, and Patty says, "What I'm tired of is having to prove to people that I'm not a racist. I love people's hearts, not their skin, but I'm tired of having to prove my heart all the time." And she also says, Dante, a little lower, another comment, that she loves when you speak because you speak the truth.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Patty's
Yeah.
a great supporter.
I know,
Absolutely.
right? When she's saying, I think it's just the ones you see. Like, there's few people on each side that will be like that, and or give off the notion that they're just assuming that as a white person you're racist. There's that one person in the group, like, there's always one person on each side they're not communicating correctly what they're saying, and it comes off as like, well, you just are because you're this. Someone might, and media loves the craziness and the violence, so they're gonna really showcase
Right.
that, and the person that should not be filming and speaking about that, Nate, and actually filming the person that is gonna tell you an actual intellectual answer. That makes sense instead of being hateful.
Right,
Even if they
right.
don't mean it. It's just, it's unfortunate. And I think now, especially, not even 10 years ago, but like now it's very prominent, like of a lot of older white people think that, I don't want to have to prove it. It's like, it's not that. It's just acknowledging what's going on, what's continuing to go on, what happened in the past, and just trying to make things so it literally is 100% equal, and we don't even have to think about this as a problem.
I think what you just said is key, really. is acknowledging the fact that racism
Right.
exists.
Yeah.
I don't think that, like, I'm not the type of person to go around and try to, point
Right.
out who's racist or who is this and
Right.
who's that. My thing is this: there's a struggle that we're dealing with concerning the system,
Right.
and because that struggle is real, the best way to be on that righteous side is to admit or acknowledge, and watch this, if you don't know, and if maybe you might not understand, like, and some people don't understand what black folk go through on
Right.
a day-to-day basis or whatever the case is. If you're willing to at least get a level of understanding or have the conversation, this is for
Right.
everybody.
Yeah.
Like, if you're willing to have the conversation, that right there is big to me.
That's
I'm not
the
telling
start
you
of
to
that.
go out
Right.
and fight and you got to go out and go crazy and speak out to the mountaintops, you know what I mean, and over the hills and far away, tell everybody what, and speak for me. I think the thing is more so because, like I say, I'm very well capable of speaking for myself.
Right.
Thing is that when you really want to get the education piece on why things happen the way they happen,
Right.
the disenfranchised, the oppression that takes place, not just back then but now. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
The message that I have to teach my son and my daughter,
Right.
just because of their skin color.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that, like, and to not to make my struggle or the struggle of people that look like me, not to minimalize it and say, well, we should just not talk about it, or isn't that enough protesting, or well, nothing has changed. Here's
Yeah,
the thing:
if it hasn't changed,
legislation
right.
has not changed.
Right.
No one is fighting to change. A lot of this legislation that causes oppression,
Right.
among minorities. So our thing is that as long as these systems are still intact
And
and in
things keep
place,
happening
it's
like
gonna, and
this.
guess what? And this people be like, oh, the system doesn't work. The system works perfectly, but when it was created, it was
Right.
created for people that didn't look
A
like me.
whole new world. It was a whole different world. Yeah.
I was only considered, people that looked like me was only considered 3/5 of a person when these legislations and
Right.
when the Constitution and everything was written. So until we're gonna have to revisit some of this stuff. You know
Oh,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? And I think once we get to that point where it's like, okay, we're willing to do that, and we're willing to do it on a united front with blacks and whites,
Right.
men and women, gay and straight,
Right.
everybody,
Every representation.
you know what I mean? Because the thing is we all have our own things that we deal with. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the first thing that we all must deal with is that man or that woman that we see in the mirror when we go standing, when we get up in the morning,
Right.
and we wash our face, and that
human
face that looks up.
decency.
Absolutely.
It's-
And again, black aren't. I'm not. I can't speak for everyone. I want justice. I want equality.
Right.
I'm not looking for revenge, but it would be a problem if black folks were looking for that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like,
I think that's what a lot of people who are racist or ignorant think. Is
yeah, it's like
against white people.
We want equality. We want equity. We want to be able to not have to work 3 times as hard to be considered equal.
And that's exactly what everything you just said is all they need to understand, and to really that's it right there, and to be treated just like that. I mean, you couldn't have said it better about that.
And I
you
like
know?
what Mary said on here. I just checked that out because Patty is true. You don't have to prove it. Be exactly who you are. You know what I mean? Be exactly who you are.
Right.
Be loving. Be caring. You know what I'm saying? Be fair. Because that's all that's the thing. I have to be a fair person. You know what I mean? I have to be, righteous in that realm where I show love, I respect.
Right.
But when I respect, I demand respect back. Of course, you know what I'm
Right.
saying. But being fair and just being who we are, I think that's the best thing to do. You don't have to prove to anyone anything, because because here's the thing:
If you know it.
when you know what you are and what you're not, at the end of the day, that exudes out of you. That comes out of your pores. You know what I mean? And no one has to. There's no question about it. You know what I mean? No one,
Right.
And you don't have to. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just be exactly who you are. So I get it. Thanks, Mary.
Yes, thank you.
That message was for Patty, because true story is that, you know, it's a lot of people who just have pure hearts, and you may not know exactly what to do because it's different. Because yes, you weren't a part of the hands-on that created the system, or you weren't hands-on with owning slaves or ripping babies out of mothers' hands or lynching men or setting people on fire or locking doors with congregations in them and torching the church. Like you weren't a part of that. Is the biggest thing is just to try to get that education piece and be willing to talk about it,
right?
To have that dialogue. I like what my cousin Orlando, he says a lot. Man, I'm a fiend for knowledge. I love knowledge.
We were just saying, we both agree with that.
So that's the thing, you know. So as long as we're willing to have that dialogue, like we're here, we're sitting, and we're able to connect, and we're talking
excited about
it. And this could go on forever. So
I know we really could. I know. I just one last thing I just want to say is something that I had to learn, because I guess it was just, I don't know, just something with people, but like, you know, I like to just know if I've done something wrong to someone or a friend or something. I just want to know, like, you know, give me the decency of just knowing what did I do in person, so we can, you know, because on phone or text it's hard to understand the context and if it's a real big issue or not. And this happens, this can be for anything and anybody, but like that's what I've learned is, you know, I you know, tell me what it is that it is to check you. And I think as a friend and a good person, it's good to like nicely let another person know if they're coming off in a wrong way or not. You know, it's not an insult if you go up to someone nicely. You don't have to be mean and say you know, why did you say that or that. You know, you can talk to them and actually just nicely ask them why they feel that way. Or, you know, I just feel like we need to give each other more breaks and just give each other more communication, even though it's hard sometimes, and during
honesty.
Honesty and just being open and you know, giving people the time of day.
Because some things get lost in translation.
Right.
It does.
It does. It gets messed up or time apart. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, what a great evening. Johnny, I want to thank you for being part of this.
Yes, thank you. I hope to be back in
I'm sure
some
you
future
will.
thing.
And Dante, as always, a great voice for our community, and I certainly hope we can work this to where we can have a regular forum and maybe undertake to have a generational interaction.
That'd be a great idea.
That would be good.
And for those who, just to add on, for those who are watching, hey, feel free to chime in, call in.
Yes, please.
Whenever we have, you know, of course, we're towards the end of the show right now.
Right.
But
future.
I can talk. As you can see,
people who know us and you know, people who know me, I could talk for hours and not even not even have you guys here. I would just that's serious. I talk to my cats sometimes. I have to actually get it out or else I go crazy. So.
Yeah. But we love interaction and invite other people to you know, to come and call in or chime in. And
this affects us all too.
Absolutely, because if it affects one, it affects all.
It's for everybody.
That's so true. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank Ohio Barb, who takes care of our facilities. And this evening we had Julian Hardy handling audio, doing a great job. As always, these kids are part of the Yowawa youth. And so we call them the yo-yos. And so Yo-Yo Julian did a great job. And Johnny and Dante, I really look forward to having you guys back on Yowawa Media.
Absolutely.
All right. God bless. Thank you,
God
everyone.
bless. Everyone have a great night.
In.
Thank you.